Now we move and we start with China. China has introduced a new package of measures to boost private investment. With the new plan, the Chinese government is supporting private capital participation in key projects like rail and nuclear power, provided they meet certain approval requirements and return expectations. Furthermore, according to the General Office of the State Council, the Chinese government is working to remove restrictions on businesses in the service sector. Another key part of the plan is to promote digital empowerment for small and medium-sized enterprises, while allowing more qualified projects to issue real estate investment trusts in the infrastructure sector. These measures aim to remove barriers, expand access, and provide stronger guarantees to spur more private investment. China has introduced a new package of measures to boost private investment. With the new plan, the Chinese government is supporting private capital participation in key projects like rail and nuclear power, provided that they meet certain approval requirements and return expectations. Furthermore, according to the General Office of the State Council, the Chinese government is working to remove restrictions on businesses in the services sector. Another key part of the plan is to promote digital empowerment for small and medium-sized enterprises, while allowing more qualified projects to issue real estate investment trusts in the infrastructure sector. These measures aim to remove barriers, expand access, and provide stronger guarantees to spur more private investment. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Asta Chadha. She is a Ritsumeikan University Associate Professor of International Relations, joins us live from Kyoto. Thank you very much, Dr. Asta, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. Dr. Chadha, looking at this now, how do China's new private investment aligns with President Xi's broader political agenda of common prosperity, and what does this signal towards the recalibration of state market relations after years of tight regulatory and a tightening of the regulatories in China?
Right. I mean, this shows that, all that was being said about Chinese economy being in a boom phase was not all entirely true, because Chinese economy for quite some time now has been showing signs of slowing momentum, and hence easing or making way for a favorable environment, let's say, for the private sector to sustain that growth which President Xi had been aiming at, seems to be very closely aligned with his goal of achieving high quality development. And we must remember that private enterprises account for a huge chunk of the businesses, and they contribute more than 50% of Chinese technological innovation. So it's also important to see that what sectors is it that China is trying to push private sector and participation in. And we see that it is going to be, what they're pushing for is this idea that major national projects, specifically the ones related to commercial nuclear power, electric vehicles, robotics, pharmaceuticals, artificial intelligence, are the ones wherein, more private sector investment comes in, and more of the innovation comes in as well. And this is aimed primarily at boosting the Chinese economy, but also strengthening Chinese capabilities and marking a better space or a huge or a grander space for China in the global economic supply chain.
Do you think that companies, especially in Asian countries and European countries, would private companies still be hesitant to move toward China market?
Yeah, again, it all depends on the kind of policies Chinese government is able to unveil, because remember, we are looking at what they are calling a favorable environment might also mean that at some point they might try to subsidize their domestic private sector industries to boost their technological advancement and more investment. And what that would mean ultimately is that there's going to be way more intensification of this trade related competition, and we've seen in the past that nothing is off the table, including geopolitical rift or export controls or even Trump tariffs. So it needs to be seen what I think how private sector investors from across the globe are going to respond to this is, one, they're going to assess the market in China and see whether Chinese new industrial strategy is not just yet another reiteration of its national security policy and its domestic economic interests, but also for trying to establish China as one major part of the overall liberal global supply chain. That's one. And two, they will look into how feasible it is at this point to invest in China and how long term can they maintain those investments.
And lastly, Dr. Chadha, in what ways could these measures, although we don't know the particular details about it yet, influence regional economic dynamics in Asia, particularly regarding competition in investment flows between China, Japan, South Korea, even India?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, these are, at least from what's visible so far or what's been out there in public knowledge, if there are going to be any sort of economic and, technological subsidies or some sort of a government support to promote Chinese domestic companies or private sector into this wider, economical and technological domain, we see two clear possibilities. One could be that Chinese industrial strategy could be seen by countries like the US and US allied nations as a Chinese strategy to put some competitive pressure on the global supply chains, which is what I was referring to earlier when I said that this could lead to further tariffs. And we've seen things like export controls and tariffs still remain on the table, and they tend to deepen geopolitical rift. As for the countries that have maintained a very strong dependence on China, it is a very structural dependency, and we are talking about countries like India there as well. And India depends on Chinese imports in very critical sectors like electronics, solar power, or pharmaceuticals. These could be reinforced as a result of these of China's policy to boost its own private sector investment in products or in manufacturing. And this could, in some way, probably increase that strategic dependency that India has maintained. So I think, depending on what the kind of policies China unveils, we will see a lot of counter policies by other countries.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Asta Chadha for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much.